Today I'm honored to welcome Felicia Pecora, who is more informally known to anyone who has ever met her as Peco. Peco is a veteran in every sense of the word. She's a U.S. Army combat veteran and a retired lieutenant from the Tampa Police Department after 23 years of dedicated service. Her journey spans an incredible range of roles, from training new recruits in officer survival and defensive tactics to serving nearly 7 years on the Tampa Bomb Squad and the Tampa Bay Regional Bomb Squad as a skilled bomb technician, which is where we first met. Peco's expertise doesn't stop there. She's navigated the high-stakes world of undercover work, mastering close quarters combat, and developing keen observation and persuasion skills that only come from the streets. Drawing from 3 decades of hard-won experience on the battlefield and in law enforcement, Peco founded the Do Her Academy and now shares her invaluable lessons through comprehensive safety training, empowering others to take control of their own safety. More importantly, Peco's hard-won lessons were learned through grit and resilience and during combat zones, acute and chronic exposure to critical incidents, and an officer-involved shooting. One day, Peco found herself standing on a bridge too far. Today, we're going to hear about her journey to and through critical incidents and her journey of recovery and the way forward. Peco, my friend, welcome to tell this story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So glad you're here.
This is the greatest intro of my life.
This is a long time in the making. No, come on. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm really great. I'm glad to be on this podcast with you. I'm really glad that you have a podcast. I read your book, and I think the pages are made out of onion because my eyes were leaking a couple times. So
I did soak yours in onion.
Okay, good.
Red onion. I had to let it air out for a couple of days for the smell, but the juice was still there. You read the whole thing already? I just gave it to you at lunch on Friday.
All weekend I spent reading this. And I actually, as we get into things, I have a quote I would like to quote from the book. So we'll get there.
Yeah, I came here to talk about you today. First, I want to give a big overarching thing real quick. We first met back when we were both on the bomb squad, you on Tampa and me with the sheriff's office. You're about one of the toughest people I've ever met. First of all, just for the bomb squad stuff, toting around a 100-pound suit, you probably was like, 98 pounds because it's less material. But that was hard work, especially when we start getting to summer calls here in Central Florida. And I know that depending on when you went to HDS, the weather up there can be brutal as well. I went in September and it was rough.
I went July, and I was... At my fighting weight, I was 140 pounds, 5'5". So
that was
a large percentage of my body
weight.
With the
suit and the pan, you're carrying you on your back. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Well, I walk like a baby, toddling.
We all did. We just tried to make it look like a strut. So, known you for a while, and of course, when we both left the team, when we started promoting and stuff like that, we kind of our paths separated because we were climbing the ranks and doing our own thing. But we follow each other on LinkedIn, and something happened amazing to me as I was on my journey, trying to write the final chapters of Hiding in Plain Sight. And I saw a podcast that I don't even think you posted it. It was the host of the podcast that posted and tagged your name. I'm like, I know Peco. Let me see what's going on there. And it was A Journey in Boots, the story of Felicia Pecora. And I listened to it that day, and it's not a very long episode when you talk about Rogan and Jocko. Those are 3 and 4 hours sometimes, but it was action-packed. Stuff that I had never heard come from you. I would have never thought about you. And, somebody told me, hey, Peco's delicate. I'm like, yeah. Like
I have
Dynamite.
Told everybody for years that I'm a delicate flower, and the response is always a laugh, and I don't understand.
Yeah, no. Well, I understand because that's laughable. But, I started listening to the podcast, and I made it about an hour into it, and I started hearing you talk about some of the events that you were going into later in your career. And it struck me because I was a point in my transition from retirement into this journey for Hiding in Plain Sight, trying to figure out purpose and trying to sort my own stuff. And I found myself driving down the road, shaking my head, thinking, yes, I understand, I relate to that. And though we had not spoken face to face since, my God, I think we've seen each other at a couple of events working, but I don't think we've had a conversation since like 2012.
Right.
And to hear the things that you've experienced going through and all the things that you've done, and it really helped me. It validated a lot of things that I was feeling and a lot of my experiences. God, I know exactly how she feels. And yes, that too. And literally had to pull to the side of the road, and I picked up my phone, and I was just moved to text you or to send you a message on LinkedIn or something saying, hey, I'm trying to listen to this. I can't get through it. And I want to talk to you because this is really hitting me. And I picked up my phone and I looked at it, and you had sent me a message on LinkedIn, which is weird, completely random, because we hadn't spoke again, at any length since 12. And the fact that I was listening to that podcast and it was on my heart to reach out, you had reached out to me, and that was it. I was a mess, and it's taken me 3-4 times to actually get through the episode. Again, it has nothing to do with the episode. It's just the material in it. But I've listened to it 3 times over the weekend. We finally was able to get through it, and now I'm just, I am in awe. So I don't have any questions other than tell me about it. I want you to share this because this is really just incredible. The recovery is incredible. So please,
The recovery is incredible. And it never would have happened without a lot of people. It was not on my own at all. As a matter of fact, I had no idea how broken I was until my brain literally stopped working. I thought I had everything under control. I was Lieutenant Peco, badass of the Tampa Police Department. Unknown to myself, total idiot. And being the best at the scene, being the best at everything, and lifting other people up at the same time. So helping other people be their best by just giving everything. Not realizing I at that time, I really didn't have much to give because my brain was breaking. And it actually started a year before the actual traumatic brain injury. So a short version of my story is I was in the Army to pay for college because I was poor, and then joined the police department in about 20 years into 20 years into being a police officer. I had an incident with a little girl who was shot in the chest, and it was our first child murder in Tampa in over 20 years. So I was the third person on scene, did CPR, all the things that go along with that. We had a crowd surround us, trying to kick us, calling us everything but a child of God. It was just all crazy. The mother was really hard to deal with, but under the circumstances, I completely understand. So a year later, I knew that was going to be rough to get through. The way that, all of the scenes, any cop working anywhere, when you have a rough scene, especially a child death, it's going to suck to sleep that night. It's going to maybe take a couple of days. If you have kids that age, you're going to squeeze the crap out of them all the time and probably yell at them because you don't want them ever to get hurt. And then you're going to settle down, and then you're going to get back into the flow and forget all about it, or think you forgot all about it. But that little memory is going to deposit itself, and it's going to show up later if you have enough to push you over the edge. So a year later, I'm at an event, and I'm always been community oriented, like to the point that some people made fun of me because of how community oriented I was. I was always about getting out, talking to the people, all that kind of stuff. I had the squad. I would take my squad on holidays to 17th and Idell, which was one of the worst, most dangerous, violent areas in the city, and tell them to go mingle, because it's really hard to hurt somebody if you humanize yourself. So, and my proof of that is I was in District 2 and District 3, they have some rough areas in it. My entire career, in my last 2 years, I was in District 1, which is by the stadium, Bayshore Boulevard, the Champaign District. And our only hood that we had in District 1, people remembered me because they moved over from other districts. And so the officers didn't never do walkthroughs or anything like that. And I would walk through and I heard, "Hey, Officer Peco." And I was like, "Hey, girl, how are you?" So that was always my big push was community engagement. So I'm at this thing, a mother whose child had been killed with gunfire had started this thing called Stop the Shoot. And it was the Black community talking to the Black community about stop using guns because all you're doing is killing our children. It was great. It was fantastic. There was over 100 people there. And they had the news there, and it was fantastic. So the parents that were speaking, they all had giant poster boards. And I remember I looked and I recognized the little girl, and it was a smiling face, of course, not the image from that night. And then I looked and I saw the mom. I recognized the mom, and there was a man with her, and I thought I recognized him. So the mom was not happy with me that night, even though we did everything. Like I bent over backwards to make sure she got to the hospital. And, as far as I'm concerned, no harm, no foul on that night, because I can't even imagine how absolutely insane I would have been had it been my daughter. So she gets a free pass for everything that happened that night. On this particular day, they got done speaking. They said beautiful things, and the man was kind of off by himself. And on the night of the event, a man had come through the crime scene tape. And of course, I was, you're very protective, especially if it's a child. You're very protective of the scene. You want to make sure you could find the person and everything's done right. So, I approached him. He said he was the stepfather. So I'm like, whatever you need, buddy. Here's some water, We found a little place for him outside of the scene for him to sit and be. He just wanted to be near the last place she was. So that not the day of the stop the shoot, I thought that was him. So I said, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I was at the scene. Are you the girl's stepfather?" And he said, "No, I'm the mom's uncle." So I was like, "Okay, well, it's great to meet you. I loved what you said about the name. I don't want to say the name because I don't want to violate anybody's privacy. But about that moment, the mom came up from nowhere and just laid into me and accused and said, 'You're the one who tried to tase me,' and just went off and screaming at me. And the whole crowd just turned and looked at us. And so I'm a lieutenant, right? I'm all about community engagement. I'm the one who said these officers should come because this is where we need to be. And I am just waylaid upon by this mother. And I feel this I don't know, this shaking on the sides of my face. Like if you've ever been scared, like you almost died or something. Like it's easy to equate it to if you're driving and somebody gets in your lane and you're like, "Wah!" The sides of my face shaking and it just felt like unreal. I could feel the heat rise in my face, but I was bound and determined I was not going to get mad. I was not going to, retaliate. So just very quietly, I was like, "No, ma'am, I'm the one who tried to save your daughter, and I'm the one who made sure you got to the hospital." And then I just walked away. And after a career being the go-to for this scene is the worst ever, we need it safe. Peco, this scene is horrific. Dead nuns everywhere. We need stability. Peco, I was that girl. Like I always had a solution. As I walked away, I was lost. I did not know what to do or where to go or what my place was. And I just went and sat or stood under a tree, and I couldn't think. Like it was just this blank space, and I couldn't think of what the next thing was to do. And so then I finally got my bearings, and I was like, okay, it's the end of my shift. I'm actually here after my shift. I'm going to tell these cops, stay with them, and I'm going to go home. So I did that. And like we were talking about, every cop who's ever had a bad scene, you have bad memories when you're trying to fall asleep for a couple of days. I didn't have the memory of this little girl that night. She was with me. She was in the room. The lights were still around me. The smell of the, Shasta and the street, the urine in the street. the feel of the road. My knee was cold because I was doing CPR on her, and liquid, when liquid comes out from underneath, it's on your knees, so it's cold when you stand up. All of that for 3 months, she was with me. And I was thinking, because I'm a pretty practical person. I don't, believe in ghosts and all that kind of stuff. But I was like, the first thought was not that I'm crazy. My first thought was not that my brain's damaged. This is totally normal. My first thought was, well, first of all, I was like, how was she following me? And then I became very paranoid. And so I was running my squads from my house, hiding out in my house, only leaving for roll call, not talking to them, because in about a period of about 2 weeks, I lost the ability to really communicate. I had these major lags. So a sentence would take forever for me to get out. And my memory was totally reduced to about a couple of minutes, like legitimately a couple of minutes. And then I was paranoid, having the hallucination of the little dead girl. And then I had fight or flight on duty, which read about it. Our chief gave us these books about, emotional survival and law enforcement. So I understood it, clinically or whatever. But I was in my car, and a little girl, I saw a little girl with a little chest, who was like walking by or something. And all of a sudden, all the air got sucked out of the car, got sucked out of my lungs. And I was sweating and shaking, and I couldn't breathe. And that lasted for almost an hour, where I couldn't breathe. And I drove home that way, trying to get breath. It's a miracle I didn't crash in anything, but I had to get into the house in a way so that people didn't see me freaking out in uniform, because that's what my main fear was, being disrepute to my agency and sullying the uniform by somebody seeing me out of control. That's how fucked up I was. Excuse my language. So I finally, by the grace of God, I go to like this, my friend has this like get together, and there's a guy that he's the only other veteran in the room, and we gravitate towards each other. And this is during the period I'm trying to hide everything. And I'm thinking, all I need to do is run harder, run faster, drink more water, take some Motrin, right? Like a good soldier. And I'll be good to
Hydrate,
go.
change your shock.
Yeah, be good to go. So we're talking, and he's talking about it was a Navy commander, and right before he got out, he took advantage of the GI Bill, got a PhD in biochemistry, as you do, right? And then he did studies on combat veterans with PTSD who had traumatic brain injuries. And he had a hyperbaric oxygen chamber clinic here in Tampa. And so I was like, whoa. And he explained, these combat soldiers come in, and we've had like this amazing success rate with them recovering from their PTSD symptoms and the TBI. And in fact, this guy had a traumatic brain injury from a crash, but you'd never know it except for you can see damage above his eye. You'd never know it from his speech, from his thinking, his walking, none of that. There's no sign that he had a TBI, because he did his own program himself and healed himself. So, of course, my first thought as the high-speed go-to for the Tampa Police Department was, this would be great for citizens, because I don't need this. And so I got with our behavioral health clinician, and I was like, I don't know anything about this. This sounds amazing. Can you come with me? And because see if this is snake oil, because I don't know, I don't know. So she came with me. We met with them. He actually showed us this presentation of the results of this is what the brain looked like after the oxygen and brain mapping in ice baths. It was a whole protocol. This is what the brain looked like, and it was like healed, and it was incredible. So he starts naming off some of the symptoms that these study participants had, and loss of memory, communication lag, sometimes hallucinations, fight or flight. And I was like, what did you just say?
Did you start sweating when he was running down that list?
I was like, well, that's like I was calculating, but my brain was at such a lag that I think they were talking about something else when I finally was like, hey, what did you just say? And I was like,
Well,
go back to
in your
those.
defense, though, Dr. Joe is a fast mover.
He is. He's very
He's a
New York,
very
very,
animated character. And we're
yes.
talking about Dr. Joe Turry or Dr. Deep Sea, as he
Yeah.
can be found on the social media.
Yeah.
Incredible human being. I got to meet him at a fundraiser for the Mac Parkman Foundation. It was a CTE and TBI fundraiser or charity.
That guy saved my life.
Yeah, no, stuff that he was saying, it was amazing to me. And it was actually, no, I know exactly. Okay, mind lag. I know exactly how I found A Journey in Boots with Felicia Pecora because he was on the week prior to you. And I watched his episode and I scrolled down and I saw you. And that, okay, there, for our listeners, I just made a connection. Look, I'm like a big boy today. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Peco. I interrupted you and I'm glad we could work through that together.
No, I'm glad.
So go
That's
ahead.
good. So, where was I? In the office there, he's talking about symptoms and stuff like that. And so I recognized what he was saying was what was happening to me. And so, like, I had to be a big girl and pony up because I was like, I need a little moment of courage here because it sounds like what he's describing. If I am also like, this was the calculus in my head. If I am meeting all of those things, I think I might be the problem. Like that was like the behavioral health clinician, there's that, if I talk to you like a counselor, you can't tell anybody, right? And then, Dr. Deturi, you can't tell nobody, right? So I'm about to tell you guys that I didn't tell them about the hallucinations. I didn't tell them about the little girl, but I told them about the memory and the communicate. Well, they could tell the communication lag. And in fact, did you ever meet Dr. J. Royster? She is the owner of Semper Modus. She's a Air
No, I
Force
didn't.
veteran, was a combat medic, and she has a network of counselors for first responders and veterans, and they're all first responders and veterans. So that lady, she became a friend of mine. She told me she saw me that day because her and Dr. Joe worked closely together. And when I left, she asked Dr. Joe, "Is she on duty?" Because I was in my uniform. And he's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "She shouldn't be." Because she could tell by my face and the 1,000-yard stare and the, like, I was just looking around. And she said when I was introduced to her or something, I was like, it took me a minute to like focus on her face and say hi or whatever happened. Because I actually don't remember that.
Had anybody else ever mentioned that? Like to this day, has anybody said to you, "Hey, this is, you look like you were lost back then," or anything, or was it just
I had one corporal
you think it
who,
was? I was
I
going
had
to
one,
ask if did it was just because she was a professional and said, "Hey, wait a second, something's off," or do you think it was visible to everyone? They cared.
nobody said anything about it because I was functioning. I was doing what the department required. I talked to one of my corporals who actually is getting a master's in counseling. He's going to be a counselor for first responders, as we need plenty of those folks. So and before well, let me get there. Once I told them about it, I was able to keep the behavioral health person in my confidence and was able to kind of talk about what was going on. And then because of the fight or flight and understanding that, the most dangerous person in the room is not the angry guy, but the most fearful person is the most dangerous. So I finally was able to put that connection together that, hey, I am typically the most ranking person at any scene. I am always armed when I'm on duty. And if I have a fight or flight, if I see a little kid while I'm on one of these scenes with a little chest and I'm all of a sudden back, I become the most fearful person at this scene. And now I am the danger. And not only am I the danger for citizens, I'm the danger for these officers. So that was like, I remember the day when I had to say out loud, I can no longer be a police officer. I'm no longer capable of being a police officer. Man, I've cried like, I didn't even know I had that much fluid in me. I cried like a baby because you know what I'm talking about, especially if people read your book, the identity It's like, there's nothing, if we think that there's nothing else but the identity, that's all we have to hold on to. That's our value and worth. And so, like, talk about, it was a cataclysmic moment for me. And so once I kind of accepted it, so in Florida, workers' comp covers PTSD now. Not every state has that. So for others watching in other states, we're lucky here in Florida. That happened back in 2019. So I was going to put a claim in, but I couldn't write it because I couldn't write either, by the way. Oh, I forgot to say that. Words stopped making sense to me because the letters, I didn't understand what they meant. So I couldn't read. And the only thing I could reply back to my sergeants when they would send me texts and it was more than a couple of words, I had no idea. So I was always like, 10-4, whatever you think. But I had great sergeants, to their credit. They were all senior sergeants. They were great. They had no idea what was happening either. So when I put my paper in, I had my best friend had to write the words out for me because I couldn't write. So she wrote the claim for me. And then
Now, real quick, the person who wrote that for you, have you been on any calls with them, any events that you were,
we were in a shooting
was there
together.
a bonding moment that you felt you could trust her?
Yeah, we were in a shooting together. She saved my life.
Well, I knew the answer to that, but you completely brushed over that. So you want to talk about that a little bit? Was this before?
Yeah, so the reason I know that the Florida legislature covered workers' comp or PTSD claims in 2019 is because I was in a shooting in 2019 on Thanksgiving. And it was, you have your skeleton crew, and it was around lunchtime. Me and this other officer, we had brought breakfast in for everybody. I swear to God, it was 4,000 calories everybody left with. Like, we were loaded up. So when lunchtime came, I let my guys meet with their families. Some of them came to the district. Some of them met them out at different places because it's typically, we don't have a whole lot of calls in the morning time, right? When the families start getting pissed with each other, the night guys, they have the problems. So we had a call that came on that was fireworks. And this was like, I don't know, noonish or something. And then you don't ever get a fireworks call on Thanksgiving. Like, what the heck is this? So the zone officer was meeting his wife and kids for Thanksgiving at the district. So I'm like, I got it. No problem. So, and I was a sergeant at the time. So I had a total senior sergeant attitude about it. I got it. So I drive there, and for some reason, the complacent cop in me would have parked right in front of the house. And for some reason, I didn't. I parked back away. There was a boat parked in front of the house and I think a truck or something. So there was a fatal funnel as soon as you hit the thing between a boat and a truck to go up to the door, and the door had a porch or whatever. So I parked, I slowly walk up and I do peek around the boat, and I see there's a guy there who is like smoking on the porch. I'm like, is this the guy? Because the comments were first fireworks and then shots fired, guy in boxer shorts, and then no, it's just fireworks. Another callback, it's just fireworks. So for some reason, I was like, I got it. So my partner, who saved my life, takes the back without anybody asking her. She just does it. So I'm walking up because she hasn't gotten there yet because I didn't wait, as you do. And I'm talking to this guy, ends up being a roommate of the guy in boxer shorts. And he's like, this guy he's got his girlfriend. They're in the pool house. That's where he lives. And he keeps, or maybe she lived there, but he won't let her leave. He fired a bunch of shots in the air. So he's got a gun, and they've been drinking and smoking weed all day, or, all kinds of stuff. So I'm like, okay. And then another lady came out who was another roommate, a female, came out and corroborated. Yeah, he shot, fire shots in the air, but he wasn't pointed at her. They're just drunk. And, he won't let her leave, though. She kind of corroborated that. So by that time, the other officer got there, and we were listening to the story, but then the other roommate came back out again and said, oh my God, He's got her at gunpoint. He won't let her leave. He's going to kill her. So now we're in, because he's already shot, now we're in the active shooter mode, and all bets are off. We're just going in. So apparently there was a Rottweiler. I have no recollection of it because I had audio exclusion and I had tone, right? I see the door to the pool area. We opened the door to the pool area, and the pool house was actually a metal shed next to this green, disgusting pool that if I would have fallen in it, I would have been dead, like acid. It was so, that's the thing I was thinking of was, oh God, whatever happens, do not fall in that pool. So as we were looking, we were quiet and it was the right thing to be quiet. The door was open and we could see somebody kneeling on the other side of that door. And I came up behind him first quietly, and I could see this woman was just terrified and in her underwear. He was on his knees, and I looked in his right hand, right? Because that's where they say, most people are right-handed. He's got a remote. So I'm like, there's no way I'm shooting a man with a remote in his hand. Look how good I am. I recognize that's a remote. I look in his left hand, and there's a two-tone Glock 9 that he's just kind of holding. So I say, just as I've been trained by all the great trainers at Tampa Police for the last 20 or 19 years at the time, stop, police, don't move, drop the gun. And he raises the gun, is pointing at the woman, so I shoot him. I take the first shot there. He turns around, split second it feels like, and the gun was this far away from my belly, and my first thought was, okay, colostomy bag, here it comes. And so I shoot again, and I shoot again. And no idea that my partner was on the other side of the door that was open, and she couldn't see anything, but she could hear everything. She heard the woman screaming and knew where she was because of the screaming. She shot through the door. The shot hit his arm, flung the gun away before it could hit me. Let me just, you could see that, right? All of a sudden, bright red blood everywhere. He's shot in the femoral artery. Falls down. I mean, and it's the spray and everything. So we're looking, the gun actually ended up on the other side of this shed thing. The woman is more freaked out than ever because this poor lady just saw me shoot this guy that she loves. No matter what the cycle of violence is or any of that, she loves this guy, right? So immediately my partner goes into life-saving mode. She sees a towel, she gets a towel on the wound. We both holster because the danger is gone. And we were told, we sounded like we were ordering pizza on the radio, but we're like, we need ambulance. We got tourniquets, shots fired, all that kind of stuff. I walked the lady into the living room so that she didn't have to see all that. My guys came, and it was, as a supervisor, it was an amazing moment because they all knew what to do. Even my rookie, he had a medical kit. And they had tourniquets on. They were doing everything they were supposed to do, stopping the blood, controlling the scene, like everything. And the other officer and I were like, okay, this is actually under control. There's nothing for us to do here. We're now suspects in a homicide. We have to back out. So I asked for another supervisor to come, and we just went and stood by our cars. And this was Thanksgiving. So I didn't have any problem with the fact that this guy ended up succumbing to his injuries because he was going to kill this woman. So I never had nightmares or anything about that. But the thing that showed up that I had been stuffing down and not dealing with was my bad relationship and my lack of support at home and my inability to communicate what kind of support I needed. Because I was the protector. I was the one that made everything okay. And I grabbed onto that identity. And I think you mentioned that in your book about, I'm going to read you. Here comes the quote. Excuse me. Let's see here. Living up to the story that is built around you is emotionally draining. When someone tells you that they believed they were going to die and fired a round out of desperation, then only after seeing you is assured that they would live, that everything will be okay, It's the heaviest burden I have ever carried. The fear of letting someone down was now tucked in the shadow. I lived exactly that. My fear of letting my family down, fear of letting the department down, always having to be this thing that didn't even exist. The perfect cop doesn't exist. The always on protector does not exist. So the lack of, or the, let's see, the lack of support and my inability to ask for what I needed added a significant burden to the fishbowl of when you're in a shooting and all the scrutiny that comes. Because whenever you're in a shooting, and you've been in a shooting, there's professional jealousy. And that comes out of nowhere. And that's the people you had no idea would ever feel that way. And in fact, I think that a lot of people didn't know they were going to react that way. And my partner actually experienced it way more than I did. So I had problems sleeping, and, I didn't want my partner at the time to be at the scene when it happened because I didn't feel safe. Like, it wasn't psychologically safe. I just wanted to be on my own, go through it by myself, because I didn't want to burden anybody, but I also didn't trust anybody. So that was just on the way to my brain breaking was that shooting. My mom died the next year, the day after Thanksgiving. Good Catholic, I have tons of guilt about that. And then all these things, I was just at all these scenes that were just so horrific on top of each other. I never took a break, although I always checked on other people and made sure they had the breaks, because it never occurred to me, because I was the boss. I didn't need a break. I'm supposed to take care of you. But looking back, I see now, hey, wait a minute, there's a guy above me. Why didn't that guy tell me to stay home for a couple of days? Because he didn't know. Because with my tenure, the people above me had way more tenure than I did, and they didn't do that back then. And so now, looking back, the people that trained us, those cops, I don't think they had the mental health issues to the extent that our generation and the next generation have had, because they don't have the volume of incident we've had. So, plus they had more of a connection, and connection is the key. You can live through anything, and there's studies about children and being traumatized. It's not a trauma if your mindset says it's not a trauma. It's a trauma if your mindset says it's a trauma. And that's where we have the dichotomy between one person says, I stubbed my toe and now I need psychological counseling. And another person's like, this guy just set himself on fire in front of me. I'm fine. Which, by the way, that was what I experienced the day I went to my mom's memorial. I didn't take the day off on the day of my mom's memorial. I was at work and the guy set himself on fire. And I lost my favorite boots because I was in the Hillsborough River trying to pull them out. Went home, took a shower, got dressed, and went to my mom's memorial. And I didn't think there's nothing wrong with that. That's what everybody does, right? Diluted. Completely diluted.
I've had some holiday days myself. We had a shooting that SWAT responded to on Thanksgiving Day several years ago when I was a young supervisor. So yeah, I remember leaving my niece's birthday, because down the street somebody had shot himself in the front seat of his car with an AK. I was like, hey, you know what? I'll take this cake to go. I'm literally 2 blocks away. I'll get there. I'll run the scene, and cool. So yeah, that's why when I listened to the episode with what's that?
I was eating pecan pie made by another cop at my IAE interview for my shooting because I was hungry because we hadn't eaten since our 4,000 calorie breakfast. Yeah. I was like, oh, I can have this.
It's amazing the things that you think about. Like after my shooting, I was pissed because they brought us cold pizza. I'm like, really? I couldn't wait till I get to the district before you order this. It would have at least been warm before the interviews. So it's amazing the things that we revert back to and we hang on to. But yeah, so the shooting, then your mom passing, then the little girl. Now, I know, and anybody who's listening to this, knowing that any officer that's been 20, 23 years in, plus military, any of that stuff, these weren't 3 calls, and the burnt guy in the river. These aren't 3 calls and a family incident. One of the things that I try to remark about is, and I think some people in leadership positions may forget this, that when we come to work in law enforcement, in the first responder community, we're either 18 years old or 21 years old, but at least 18, and we do this for, say, 30 years, 35 years. So I would say that between the years 18 years old and 50 years old, everything big that is going to occur in your life is happening. You're going to meet the person you love. You're going to get married. You may get divorced. You have children. You may lose a child. You may lose your parents. You're going to buy a house. Somebody's going to have cancer. Everything that can happen in a person's life, for the most part, is going to be experienced between those years. And you add that to, I'm serving as a first responder, or I'm serving as a military member, or people who, like us, have a foot in both worlds, plus all of the stuff that we brought in our backpacks with us to the door of our new career, all the childhood, the adverse childhood experiences that they say lead up to trauma. I mean, we all come in with our own baggage. But I think I don't want to say when the wheels start coming off, but that's pretty much in my case, and I think that's how I use it in the book, when the wheels finally come off, all these things had been experienced. And I think leadership looks at it as this is a job performance issue.
Right.
No, this is a human issue that we as sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and spouses, partners, lovers, all of these things we experience as human beings, in addition to responding to everyone else's worst day over and over and over again. They say that, and I forget because the studies have different numbers. They say the average person experiences 4 to 8 traumatic events in their life, where police officers can experience up to 700 or 800. I mean, I've had a dozen over a 3-day work weekend.
Right.
That are significant.
I had a guy die in my arms when I was an officer, and I did not shoot him.
No, I know. I deflect with comedy, and it's usually inappropriate comedy. So I apologize
it's
for
good.
that.
I love it. That's why we.
But no, it happens. It happens. If you are a first responder, you are more likely to have that happen than you are to get into a use of force, a deadly use of force.
In our generation,
it's going to happen at some point.
Our generation, nobody said, "Hey, take a break" or anything like that. I found video. I looked for witnesses. I went to the next call. No, it didn't. Like I stored that away. Never thought about it again until a friend of mine who owns a company that makes the emergency kits for first responders, military, Luminary Global. They're amazing. She had a podcast and was asking me about, were there any, and this wasn't like, we didn't even plan what she was going to ask me. She's like, were there any incidents where you wish you would have had like a trauma kit or something and didn't have one? And immediately, bang, I was right there. And I was like, holy cow, I haven't told that story, or it hasn't even come up until you asked me that question. And then as I was telling the story, I was back there. And I was sad again, because it was, how this neighborhood's beefing with this neighborhood, so they shoot them, and now it's their turn to shoot here, and now it's your guys' turn, and all that. Well, it was our turn, my zone's turn, to get shot by the other guys. And so I saw these were older guys, probably late 20s, 30s, and then the guy with the beard was probably like late 30s and chubby, and they were sitting on a private property drinking beer, but they were out and together. And I was like, I didn't even get out of my car. I rolled down the window. I'm like, hey, how you guys doing? They're like, what's up, mama? And I'm like, could you guys do me a favor and go inside, because it's our turn to get shot this night? Can we just... And the guy with the beard, the older guy, was like, it's okay, sweetheart, we're good, we know, it's all right. And I'm like, oh, all right, but check it out, I'm gonna check on you guys in a little bit, I'm just gonna make sure you're all right. Turn the corner, I'm telling you, not even 5 minutes later, tone, copy of shooting at that location. I go back, the guy who's like, don't worry, sweetheart, is laying on the lawn, sucking chest wound. And his eyes are, His eyes are just panicked. And he says, tough. And I was like, who can I call for you? Because I had my flip phone back then. We had the flip phones. And he's like, there's nobody. And I was like, that's the saddest thing I ever fucking heard. So I got, I didn't have a trauma kit. I didn't have tourniquets back then. None of us did. Or probably the prepared guys did. I didn't think about it. So I had neighbors in the hood bringing me towels and stuff. We were trying to, but you could see there's a moment, and the moment when they're gone. And so, waited for supervisor and other units to show up. And then I, like a robot, we needed witnesses. I looked for video and then made my notes, looked at the call queue, went to the next call, wrote my report, didn't think about it until however many years later when I was asked, was there ever a time you wish you had a trauma kit? Crazy.
It's amazing. It is amazing. You and I have talked about this, and I was dismissive about journaling my entire career and didn't start writing anything down until after I retired, July of 23. And, you know the story behind the book, and that's actually the second draft. And what's in there is very little of what was in the first. And, I'd let my wife read I wanted my wife to read this. And she read the first, but this one was more important to me because it's the one that I wanted to publish. And she said, there are things in here that we have never spoken of. I said, there's things in there that I've never put words to. And it was through this transition out of law enforcement and this exercise and extended journaling that I found out a lot of these things and worked them out. There's calls in there, and you read the book, but the devil in the duffel. When I wrote that, I pushed away from that for a good 6 weeks. I didn't write a thought. I didn't hit a keystroke. Nothing. It was my reaction to that was visceral. I was angry, mad, rage for 6 weeks before I could finally things back into perspective and get back onto this. So I want to get into you meeting Dr. Joe, but before that, have you done any journaling? And if you have you found that helpful?
I tried to write stuff down. Like after I got the hyperbaric oxygen treatment, I tried to write the story because I just wanted to, I wanted to find a way to not have it be in vain. Like there's a reason, I feel like there's a reason I was spared at the time. With that brain, there was a reason I was spared. There's a reason I was able to find this guy. This guy was able to find me. This guy, I was drinking when I put my paper in, and the chief's like, okay, you're done, go home. And I was like, I still have admin to do. Huh? Go home. That was it. We got you. Go home. And so I went home, and I couldn't even sit still. I could not sit still. I had to have, sounds on because I was trying to do everything I could. So the drinking started. I stayed buzzed and just under drunk for about a month and a half. And Joe called me out on it because, a sailor knows what that looks like. I would show up for my ice baths before I was even able to get the workers' comp required a psychiatrist to refer me to that treatment. So I had no treatment for the first month. I was just everything I could to stay alive day by day because I was suicidal. I was paranoid. I was afraid that my friend who had saved my life, who had written the thing for me, was going to come and arrest me. It was all over the place. And I was terrified. I couldn't be around my daughter's school because I would see children. So then I couldn't tell anybody. I was afraid to tell my daughter's mother because I was like, she's gonna use it I won't be able to see her again, ever again. And I can't, at the time, my daughter was, I think 7. So hard to have that conversation.
Yeah.
It was all over the place. And so he called me out. He's like, you drinking? And I was like, not right now, because I was at my appointment. And he's like, yes, you are. Stop. And I was like, and sometimes people like us, we just need somebody in authority to tell us, giving me an order, and I can do the order. I can be stronger, bigger. If you just tell me to do that, I will do it. So I did that. I stopped drinking completely. And it made a big difference. It made a huge difference because I was slipping. I was Thanksgiving that year, in fact, was probably the could go either way moment. And my friend had invited me to her house for Thanksgiving, and she had 2 small boys. And although I mainly was reacting to small girls, any small children really freaked me out, and I would feel like I had no air or any of that stuff. So I was terrified to go to her house because my biggest fear was I would freak out and scare the kids. Not that I would freak out, but that they would be scared. And so anything I could possibly do not to have that happen. So I'd done the ice baths, and the ice was miraculous because the ice baths cognitively helped me control my fight or flight and reduce it from an hour of pure terror and no air. I was getting air. I just thought I wasn't getting air. To about 5 or 10 minutes because I was able to breathe through it. I thought of the ice. If I could handle the ice, I could handle that. Miraculous. So I put my face in a bucket of ice over and over again for about a half hour because when you cover this part of your face with ice, it reacts to your brain and it reduces the amount of anxiety that you feel. So I started to feel a little bit better, and I got to the hour, like you're either going or you're not going. So I went, and it was okay. And I didn't have any fight or flight. And in fact, it was the first time I had laughed about any police stories since I had been like starting that whole horrible descent. And it was good, and I needed it because it connected me to people, which I needed because I wouldn't have made, if I had stayed home, I probably wouldn't be here.
The ice baths and the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, that was all part of workman's comp under the new law, because
not the ice bath. He gave me that for free because he knew I needed it.
Okay, but it's part of the thing that he does, though. The treatment that he does is kind of a holistic, everything together type deal.
Yep. So he had a whole thing.
Okay.
There's this thing that goes over your eyes, and it's 2 different messages playing at the same time, and lights going on. So you've got this whole thing, and it helps reroute those neural networks that are broken, so that the communication, like my damage was in my occipital lobe, in the back of my head, the primary damage, I think, which controls communication and hallucinations. It's a biological, it's not character. I was like, when he showed me the scan of my brain and showed me where the damage was, and I looked up what that was, occipital lobe, what does that control? It's not I'm not a weak person. It's biology.
So what you're saying is this is not as a result of a disorder, that this is a result of negative inputs over time that rewire your brain. This is a neurological issue.
And I've had hits to the back of my head. You know what I mean? We, as a police officer, and I taught fighting. I've been hit with a baton in my face.
That happened at training.
It was never prettier than this. This is all you get, but.
Well, that and car crashes. How many times have you tackled a bad guy or a bad girl?
Right.
Jumped over a fence and had a jar.
Yeah.
Hit your head on something, stairwell or something like that.
Right.
How many times have you hung yourself trying to get out of your car with your seatbelt still on? I mean, there's a lot of bashing of the head that goes on. Yeah.
Well, remember, before they lowered the seatbelts for us short folks, it would be a slice across your throat. God damn it.
Wear your seatbelt.
So, yeah, it's the point I want to make is that any police officer, it doesn't have to be, bomb techs or SWAT guys or infantry. It doesn't have to be the worst of the worst badasses. One of my favorite cops at TPD was in a shooting when he was only 24 years old. And his reaction was totally different from mine because he'd been a reserve officer at HCSO, in fact, And he had 2 years on with us, I think. And he had feelings about it. I was a numb robot. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel
Feelings.
pain. He had feelings about it because he hadn't been calloused, right? We get
Institutionalized.
yeah, and our little heart gets calloused over time. We don't feel anything. So I was surprised, but not surprised, because once I was like, this kid's 24 years old. He's, it's not easy to have bullets fly past your head and have a smoke pole in your face, right? And it's not easy to shoot. He did the greatest, and it was the first shooting we ever had that was on body camera. So the whole thing's caught. He did the greatest magazine exchange in the history of magazine exchanges. Yeah, but I digress. So what he took from that experience is he went, he did his thing. I checked on him. I didn't really know him all that well. I know him a little bit, but my friend and I made a point. Even HCSO, you guys had some shootings. We went and met with those deputies because we knew those deputies couldn't talk to their higher ups. So we went and met with them. And I was just Peco. I wasn't Sergeant Peco or Lieutenant Peco. I was just Peco. And we've been there. And anything you tell us, we're nobody to you. We're just citizens. You don't, you know what I mean? And we were able to, I think we were able to help a couple of deputies that way. And then we did the same thing with TPD cops. When that happened, I always made a point to check on people. And in TPD, it's different because at the time I was Sergeant Pecora and Lieutenant Pecora. So I knew they weren't really going to talk to me. But this young man and my partner that was in the shooting with me, my bestie, they continued to check on people at the officer level. So they could all, as peers, not officially, we weren't part of any group. It wasn't a public, relations picture. And it wasn't, let me put this on the resume so that they know how great I am as a whatever. This was privately because we needed it. Because people had reached out to me that I never expected, who had been in shootings and were like, this is what you're going to go through. This is how it's going to feel. All that stuff. So this young man turned that experience into, at our holdover, which is when you first get hired and you're on probation, before you even hit the road, you do however many weeks of scenarios, you learn our policies, all that kind of stuff. He put together a class on what it's like to be in an officer-involved shooting, all of the policy that goes with it, the psychology, how hard it is to pull a trigger. And he used his own body camera. And I think one of the most impactful points is he starts the class. There's all these new guys. It's at the end of it's like the last week of their holdover. And he starts it with the video, and you watch it and you can see the handshake, and you can hear the sound of, like, it's emotional. And then when he stops it, the question is, when we said we were going to show you a police shooting, who thought they were going to see that? And we have prior military, Afghanistan vets that were like, I had no idea. Because police, our force is face to face, human to human, because we don't have enemies, right? Our operations order is totally different. When you're a soldier, it sucks. It sucks together, though, and it sucks from a distance. When you're a police officer, not only are you saving your life, but there's all these conflicting, I'm supposed to defend everybody on the street, everybody around here, even this guy. I have an obligation.
And now I have to do life-saving first aid to try to save the person who just tried to kill him.
And they went right to it. Nobody hesitated. They went right to it. They checked on it to see if there was any ability to do so. There wasn't. Like that to me was like the next level in policing. That kid at 25 years old hit the next level of policing, something I couldn't do for 20 something years. He hit it. And then I told him, I'm like, you have inspired me to want to get to where you're at, because where you're at is completely a different planet to me, but where you're at is where we should all, keep doing that. And so now this kid, he takes vacations in a way I never took vacations. He's phenomenal, and he's a poop magnet and great at what he does. And he became an FTO and all the things, but he takes vacations. He got married, like he's got relationship. He's like, he's my hero. And he had 2 years on when I had 20. So I think he made me a better cop, and I think he made me a better supervisor and probably a better friend.
Yeah, there's a few of those in my path, and I think the profession or the disciplines, the first responder disciplines, are lucky, and I'm sure the military is going to be lucky as well, because kids nowadays, and I call them kids because I'm old, but kids nowadays coming in, they are a lot more emotionally intelligent than we were. They're not being told by, suck it up or drive on. They're not being told any of that stuff. I think that they're
And when they
more
are being
aware of,
told that, they're pushing back, which is
yeah, they are, because they're aware of who they are, and they're
right.
aware that they're allowed to have these feelings and allowed to be heard.
I think that's the next iteration of, as leaders, as police leaders, and as municipal leaders, county leaders, federal leaders. The next iteration, the next step for policing is to acknowledge that we are not supposed to go to calls. Police officers, armed police officers, are not supposed to go to calls where one guy calls because his adult brother won't give him the remote. We're not supposed to go to calls where, 8-year-old Johnny won't go to school. There are resources for that. That's not to say that people don't need help. Yeah, they do. They don't need an armed agent of the government. So when our leaders are ready to say, we're not doing that, we're not going to expose this situation that's here to bringing an armed person who now is responsible for everybody, we're not going to do that anymore. When that happens, you'll see the incidence of disciplinary problems, turnover. There's a turnover in policing right now is so high, the shortages in manpower, because we won't be going to those calls we shouldn't have been going to in the first place. And that's where I'm hoping it goes.
There's so many studies on recruitment and retention right now, and I'm not going to weigh in with any of my thoughts one way or the other. I value my career. I loved what I did, and of course there are some opportunities moving forward. Now knowing what I know, I certainly had my own share of missed opportunities. Obviously, I've got about 200 pages of them sitting in front of you. But I think the profession and all the disciplines, I would imagine, being a first responder is being a first responder. And having taught for the government and traveling the country teaching, I realized that the agency I worked for, the region that we police in, we've got it really good here.
Yeah.
And have for a long time, but we all have our problems, and they're just, they're relative to the size of the agency. And,
right. And they're global, they're national problems. Like every agency has personnel problems. Every agency promotes people who are really good at brown nosing. You know what I mean? Because it's the government. We're not the best. We're not the best. We pick the government. And as police officers, I personally think there was something, we were made for the job. So we were talking about complex PTSD, childhood PTSD before. I came from a very violent house. So what else could prepare me to be at the worst of the worst scenes and be comfortable in the violence than that upbringing? I didn't overreact. I wasn't scared. I didn't run the other way. I recognized it, and I knew ways to neutralize it. So I became useful that way. So I think that, the hardships that most police officers start out with really hard lives in whatever direction, physically, emotionally, whatever it is, homeless, whatever it is. And they're able to take those, what should be the things that destroy them, they're able to turn them into tools they can use to help others. And that's where we show up. We all show up because, national studies, over almost 80% of people that are police officers today still are joining because they want to help people. It's what happens when we're on duty over the course. And it's not even, where we get jaded. We do have a lot of interaction with the public that sucks, totally sucks. It's not fair to us. We have that, but we have a lot of internal abandonment. We have a lot of moral injury, and we don't have anybody to talk to about it because we don't know what the hell it is, because nobody, even our bosses, they don't know what it is. So when you say this new generation of police officers are way more emotionally intelligent, they're not going to have I hope, the amount of suicides we had, the amount of one-car crashes that we've had that we didn't call suicides. They're not going to have the disciplinary issues. They're not going to have those things. They're going to have other problems, because there's always problems. But I think that we're going to have a better policing, because they're smarter about what they're capable of and not capable of.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just real quick, circling back to the hyperbaric oxygen therapy and ice baths. How long did it take you? About how many therapies did it take to get from where you were to where you were sustainable? And how is that
I didn't even
gone?
think it was going to work. It started, I don't remember the month that it started, when it finally got approved. But he had gone through, I think, workers' comp. I know in total it was like 64 treatments. So it was like 3 months, 5 times a week. And it's about an hour each time in the chamber. And so that became my routine. But before I got in the oxygen chamber, I did the ice bath. I did the brain tapping. There was brain games to help with memory and stuff. I was doing those. And then the oxygen. No drinking. Just tried to cut down on the sugar, because here's another biological aspect. And any officers listening to this, you're going to be like, what? Sometimes your memory is affected because your body is inflamed and your brain is inflamed. So when your brain is inflamed, things don't work up there the way they're supposed to work. That's how my PTSD and the stress injury was made worse, because your vagus nerve controls inflammation in your body. My body just exploded. Everything hurt because everything was crushed with inflammation. And so, knee injury, your knee hurts, it's not raining, and you don't have a knee injury. Why the hell does your knee hurt? My foot hurt. My stupid foot hurt for like 3 days, and it felt like there was a truck on it with no end. Nothing could, all the Advil in the world, nothing could stop that pain until I got a lymphatic massage, of all things. And that hurt more than I can even tell you, but there's these, I guess these lymph nodes or something, and they push and they push and they push out these toxins in your body. And then I finally got relief from my foot. There was a lot of pain involved in going from, broken and paranoid and dangerous to mild-mannered middle-aged broad. It took a lot to get there. And I have this video of my first day back. I have the video that I think I showed on that podcast you watched.
Yeah, it was incredible.
I have the video from my first day back, which I was reminded, because I forgot, that I talked to a lieutenant, female, that we had been friends and kind of, worked together and everything. But she kind of told me that, everybody's talking about it. You hear about Peco? But the overwhelming good story was, we want to see the comeback. And that kind of like, you think I'm going to come back? You think I can do it? Maybe I can do it. And so I feel like I was out for 9 months. I didn't look at the calendar. I probably should have for this. It was something like that, which is a long ass time to be away from your job when your whole identity is the job.
When you're used to pushing and moving forward always.
Right. But the good thing about it was I had to shed that identity, and I saw that there was actual human being under that shiny armor, that I had no idea. I had no idea about how I felt about stuff, because how I felt about stuff was whatever works for the agency, whatever works for that situation. So when I went back light duty, and it was weird. And I just was paranoid. Like, I was thinking everybody's going to think I'm crazy and they're not going to want to talk to me, and I'm going to be isolated, but it's okay. And
You're
I
gonna
had
feel like you're the
officers.
broken toy.
Yeah, I felt like the broken toy. 100%. That's a great analogy. But I had these officers and other supervisors that I'd worked with and had worked for me, just came to even from other districts, came by my office and was like, I heard you were back. And I was like, yeah. And then it was weird because I was like embarrassed and happy. And like, some people gave me hugs and stuff. And I was so out of tune with who I was at the agency, because I was trying to be what didn't exist, that I didn't know about the respect I had and the support I had. I didn't know. I isolated myself. In the end, I'm the one that didn't connect. It wasn't them. I'm the one who didn't know how to connect. So looking back on it, somebody like me, it took the wheels to fall off for me to shed what I thought I knew and actually learn some real stuff. Because today, even back then, and just like you, I've always been a student of like leadership and management and, how to be the best you can be, performance, managing performance, all that kind of stuff, athletic performance, mental performance, like all the hoo-ha stuff. The person I wanted to be, I could never get to. And I never could figure out why. Why am I around? Why am I stuck in this pool of people who are kind of poisonous? I didn't want to be here. Why am I still here? If I'm still here, there's something about me that's not right. So what is it? And so after this experience and losing this identity, shedding it, really, it filtered out the stuff I didn't need to worry about. And it showed me the stuff that really mattered. I became a better mom. I think I'm a pretty good ex-wife. We have a great co-parenting relationship. I'm a better friend to a smaller group of friends. And I'm working hard to be a better sister, because I was like pretty tuned out of that big time. So I am actually much closer to the person I always wanted to be after all that stuff. Who knew? And 55. Who knew?
It's fantastic to hear all of this. Yeah, we actually had this conversation on Friday. The who was I supposed to be conversation, and who am I going to be now? And
Right.
it's captured in my book, and I'm glad you hit on it today, because for me, I was well, hell, you read the story. I wasn't capable of withdrawing myself from that. It had to be done for me. And as distasteful as it was the thing that I needed, because I was not capable of doing that. One, if I saw it, I would have denied it and just overcommitted somewhere else and worked harder someplace else and continued to drive until, well, we know where the story went. So, and where it is now. So,
Do you think, I know my relationship with God got a whole lot better and more real, I think. Because I thought that I was I thought I was pretty educated about, the Bible and God. And I thought that I was like doing things right until all this happened. And then like I said, that the armor that we carried was, we thought we were protecting everybody. But really, we were protecting ourselves from everybody. We didn't want them to see the real us, because we never thought the real us was ever worthy. And so that armor that kept everybody away from us, or us unconnected to them, I think for me, it was a barrier in my relationship with God. And so now I feel like I have a more real and genuine relationship with God, and the ability to improve that relationship. Whereas before, I was so clueless that I just was flatlining, wasn't moving anywhere with it. Do you think that your relationship with God has improved because of the shedding of all the things?
without a doubt, I think for me, I was so inundated with everything that was going on. Never took a vacation, never stopped long enough to be present with my kids. Things were going on within my household, family. Being promoted at any stage was fantastic. What do I need to do now to perform at this stage to make the next, so I can even be a bigger impact and a bigger, contribution to the organization, to the profession? And it was always, what is the next thing? Where else can I be helpful? And I never, going to church as a kid and being in youth groups and all that stuff in middle school and junior high and all that stuff, I was always very active and very spiritual. But, going to service on a Sunday, I was like, I'll go to church because that's where good people are. I'm tired of shitbirds, and I'll go to church because that's where good folks are. I don't have to be worried about anything, or, I'm not going to go to another party so somebody can ask me, hey, you ever shoot anybody? Tell me about the worst call you've been on. Shut up. So I went to church to see good people. And then, that didn't work because there was always some turd there, or, it's past the offering plate. And of course, in my state then, it's like, oh, great. Now they want something for me to give the word. So, okay, here's my money for the week. And, I was very suspicious of everything and everyone. What do you want from me was always the way. But once I retired, to the greater degree, but once I started becoming vocal and getting help, I started to listen more, because that identity had been pulled away. So now I had to figure out, who am I now? And to a greater degree, when I retired, you're this thing for more than 31 years, and then you wake up one day and you're not that thing anymore. What is that? So, and I found the answer to that is whatever you want it to be. So about not even that long ago, in fact, I had a conversation about it just today. It was September 9th was a day that I came to this realization that I was looking at the people that were now in my circle. And it's a very, very, it's a dot. It's not a circle. It's not enough to block the wind on me if a breeze comes up. But, and that's good, because I know the people that are there are dedicated and understand. But I was looking at some of the influences that I have, and, some of the social media influences. And I agree that, you are the sum of your friends, of your circle. You are impacted by your inputs. Obviously, I think we could both agree on that. So I stopped watching the news years ago. They just want to keep you angry. And I'm not talking about one network over another. I care less what it is. Everybody's trying to tell you what to think and to be angry about something. So I, honestly, this is the first time I'm actually saying this on a podcast, but every night for the last 3 years, I go to bed watching HBO Max, because that's where classic Looney Tunes are. Watch 2 or 3 classic Bugs Bunny cartoons before I go to bed, because it's mindless. It makes me laugh. So I set the timer on, and I set up and watch Bugs or Daffy or whatever. And, it's kind of funny. My wife laughs at me because I've seen him a billion times, and I giggle every time, and my giggling makes her giggle. And it's just, it's a funny thing. So that's part of my sleep hygiene. But back to the story, I'm deflecting. I looked at all of these inputs in my life, and all of the men and the influences that come in, and I noticed something that was going on with them that I didn't notice in myself. That, okay, I'm retired. I've got purpose now with this book and this mission, and it's not about money. It's about mission and all of these wonderful things. And I'm going to do this and do that. But these guys are moving so much faster than I am. Why is that? What do they have that I don't have? Is it their social media? Is it their message? I get it. They were SEALs. I wasn't a SEAL. It was none of that. And finally, I was still long enough to hear the message coming from every one of them. Peco, I'm saying this out loud, but they had found Christ, one after another, after another, after another. And the guy that helped me with my book, who actually wrote the foreword to this, Adam Davis, he's a former first responder, police officer, who wrote about trauma and his path back to God, and speaks about it. And he's written 9 books now. And it's all centered on that being unconquered. So I reached out to him and I said, hey man, this is what I'm thinking. It's on my heart, and all my social media is nothing but this. And I didn't go searching for it. Normally it's puppies and triathlons and military stuff, but now it's all of these spiritual things and mostly masculine things, but it all comes back to God and being a follower and your testimony and all of these things. And it was just all very powerful stuff. And I was overwhelmed with it. And I called him and said, "Hey, bro, what does this mean?" So, I've gone to church, I've raised my hand, and the pastor said, "We see you, we hear you, you see, come see us in the corner for a Bible. It won't get freaky or anything like that." And
Right.
so I've done all of those things, but it was always just kind of phoning it in. Okay, did it. I'm good. It's like
Check the box.
getting a booster to a vaccine. You're good for another year. Paid my taxes, whatever. But for the first time in earnest on November, but September 9th, I was feeling it like I'd never felt it before. It's like, this is the secret. This is what I've been missing. And once I admitted that to myself, anything that I was still concerned about, any doubt I had in me about this new purpose, about this mission, about the relationship with my wife, which all doubt had been removed back in 19 when I had my break. And I'm sure since you read the book, you understand the path that led to. And honestly, it was her faith and her strength and her belief and love for us that I'm still here. And it took me years and the lessons of other men that I used to inspire me that led me to the realization that even though I had said it, I wasn't living it or feeling it. And so the answer to your question is yes. My relationship with God has been incredible, especially recently. And it's only because I'm in a space to receive that message now.
Right.
Before that, you could have told me 5 years ago and said, "You need some Jesus. Go to church." I don't need church.
Right.
I got Jesus. I did that thing when I was baptized.
I got the T-shirt.
I did the fundraiser. I sold chocolate bars in 9th grade.
Right.
I'm all for the church. But it
Our
wasn't
armor
until
was deflecting. Yeah, our armor kept it from getting all the way through.
Yeah, it just out of reach. But
Yep.
now that I've been still long enough and have looked at the things in my life that have led me to where I am absolutely certain that I'm here for that purpose. And it was, it's been, life is better. Life is better. Being retired.
I 100% agree with that. I feel genuinely happy. Like I feel things now, which is amazing. Interestingly, when I was a sergeant, especially when we had calls like barricaded subject, getting shot at, all these, horrible calls that, especially with new guys on my squads, that humans should be nervous about going to, or even, the internal administrative stuff that makes people crazy, like not getting promoted or whatever the case may be. My go-to is always, if God is for us, who can be against us? When the civil unrest was happening and we were getting rocked and bottled and fireworks, and one of your guys got hit in the head with a brick and all this other stuff, setting gas stations on fire.
Bill Scobie, this is one of my old buddies.
Yeah. My go-to was, if God is for us, who can be against us? But it didn't, I said that like, it sounded like right, because we were alive, we won, nobody got killed, so God must have been for us. But I believe that, like, when you look at armies and squads and everything else, there is value to, if you put your faith in God, if God is for us, who can be against us? But my understanding of it now is different, because it's been a year and a month since I retired, like completely retired. No, I don't even teach the law enforcement academy anymore. And I taught that for 20-something years. I do nothing with law enforcement. I'm just like learning to be me and being a good citizen. Mm-hmm. So if God is for us, who can be against us? Really has morphed, or maybe it's expanded in my brain to mean that even the bad stuff we go through is God's with us. Even if we lost, like, I didn't get promoted, a couple of different tables. I didn't get promoted and I'm still a sergeant. I thought I should have been a lieutenant. And there I was in the shooting. And I was exactly where I needed to be. And if I'd have been anywhere else, There could have been a totally different outcome. Could have been a better outcome, but it could have been a worse outcome. And so I thanked God that day that I was not a lieutenant, that it was exactly where I was supposed to be.
Yeah. I had a friend tell me all of that.
Yeah.
That the things that you had to do in life could not be done in this one capacity or another. And that's why your timeline has changed. You did what you were supposed to do, and you were exactly where you were supposed to be when you were supposed to be.
Exactly. And I think that like the transitions from officer to undercover, right? It's like a step up. It feels like a step up, but it's a box. We were in this box for a long time, and then it at some point it got to a point where I don't fit here anymore. So when I went from light duty and I finally felt like, yeah, man, I'm good to go, and I got back in my uniform, that was like I was afraid to be proud because I didn't want to be, haughty or conceited or, I was still holding myself back. But like, I'm pretty proud that I was able to lose everything, find people to help me, get the actual help, stay connected with people, and make it back to full duty. So I only stayed for like 2 months because once I was full duty and back in the swing of things, I was totally different. And I did not fit in that box anymore. I needed a different shape. I needed a different box. And so I struggle still with the idea that, what's the point? 100 years from now, nobody's going to give a shit. What's it matter? But then I'm reminded, if God is for us, who can be against us? I went through I have got a whole chest of experience that other people can use. So who the hell am I to say nothing matters? My mission is to help people get to their next level, whatever that level is. And here's my box of stuff that I have to do that with. Doer Academy, just one of many ways that I have that I'm able to help companies with their safety plans. I do safety consulting, and inside of all that is psychological safety is the foundation of every single thing that I do with people, because I really understand what it means now. I understand what it means in team building. I understand what it means in family building and with your relationship with yourself, which warriors, we never want to look at our relationships with ourselves. It's scary. I actually, I feel comfortable like on my own, probably for the first time in my entire life. And I, as a kid growing up, my parents weren't really around. They were really a lot busier with a lot of other things. So my brother, who was 5 years older than me, pretty much raised me until I was like in middle school. So I'm used to never needing help from anybody. So I think that it's the fire that burned away, the stuff that shouldn't have been on me in the first place. And you get lesson after lesson after lesson, and no, thank you, no, thank you, and you don't get it until finally it's like, this is what you need to know. My bad. Yeah. I didn't know. So I'm lucky. I'm lucky as heck to be here. I'm lucky to have had the experiences, to have lived through it, and to have the ability to speak about it in a way that may help somebody else get to their next level.
Yeah, it doesn't do us any good sticking in our brains. So I'm glad you're here, and I'm also grateful you took time out of your day to come on this show and help me out with this. This is great. Your story is fantastic, and not that I want to give props to anybody else's podcast, but you have to go. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But I want to direct people to that episode of A Journey in Boots with you. It goes into a lot more depth, and it really is incredible.
Can I show you? Do you have time for me to show you a couple of videos?
Yeah. I didn't want to push those on you if you didn't want to show them.
No, not at all. And you can edit them and put them wherever you want. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Okay, it's doing its thing?
I don't know.
Can you see anything yet? I see. I'm supposed to select it. My bad. Idiot. Okay.
All right, I got something
Whoa.
there.
I have the. Hold on. Let me change it. Hold on a second.
Well, you put the smart glasses down. I was like, oh, she's got this figured out.
No, you know what? It's so weird. As a old lady, I've always been really good with software. Even the young kids came to me like with their AV issues. Let's see here. Okay, this is that video that I shared on that other podcast. This was my brain. The red is the damage, and that was from
It's not
a
coming up. All
EEG.
I can see is the invite I sent you.
God damn son of a bitch! Hold on, I can do this.
We're going to have to ask Uncle
Media
Jimbo
player.
to
There we
take all
go.
this concentrating out.
Got it. Okay,
There
let
it
me
is.
go back. Boop. All right. So this is the video from the other podcast, but I love to show this because it shows how it worked. This is a EEG on my brain, which is the cap and all the electrodes. So the first one was before, this one's after. You could see where the red part was the damage in the back of my head. So before all of that oxygen, the red parts were the damaged areas, and then the after. It's miraculous. As a matter of fact, Dr. Joe said it was probably one of the most drastic changes he's ever seen. This is an MRI of damage. Actually, no, this is an EEG, but it's just a different view. Damage and then less damage. And then there's the comparison. So look at all the red versus not all the red. And then this is where my head was.
That's amazing.
That's that was while I was going through that stuff. Let me show you the other thing. Hold on.
It's crazy. I don't recognize that person in the video.
Dude. Right? Crazy. You could see how dead I was in my eyes. And can you see this? Can you see the screen? Do you see a video?
It's not coming up.
Okay. 1 second. This is my first day back in uniform. And I smile. I can't help but smiling. It went
That
well.
video was 15 months ago.
Right. You could see a difference in my speaking and my face and
And
the
even
way
now,
it's
there's,
light
yeah,
years different. Yep.
it's awesome.
Thank you.
It's still baffling to me. And I know Dr. Joe has started or is about to start doing through USF. They got a grant to do hyperbaric oxygen therapy for
Yes.
veterans with mild to moderate TBI. And find the link and I'll put that on here too. It was something that Dr. Joe had mentioned to me that when I first met him, and he was about it. It was like, yeah, brother, get a hold of me and we're going to get you in on this and tell them, spread the word. We,
Yeah.
we need choice words and this kind of dude. We need guys and gals lined up around the building. And he's a very electric human being. Like the
He's a
energy
force to
coming
be
off that
reckoned with.
guy
And
is,
he's changing he's changing the perception of like a warrior's experience.
yeah.
It's where he's moving the needle from weak character to biology. We don't look at football players who speak slow and slur their speech as weak character anymore. We understand the
These are
concussions. You know
injuries.
what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
we understand it for them, and you know, we probably understand it for our veterans even more so, and us and firefighters. Firefighters are the hardest people on themselves than we ever thought of being. But we're the last I think, to join the party on, okay, maybe it's not character, maybe it's
And now we're
biology.
a good 8 to 10 years behind the veteran and military community.
Right.
But luckily
Yep.
they are certainly doing the work now and have been for years. And well, they're doing the work for us. So all we have to do is shift the mindset. They've laid the groundwork. The science
Right.
is there, the studies are there, the money is there to do these things. We just need to get over ourselves and realize that this is not like you said, it's not a character thing. These are injuries that changes cannot be compelled. You cannot will them away. Once
Right.
you realize it and understand it, you have to open your freaking mouth and then you have to do the work. You said earlier that everybody's got a story and, where's the message of the story? If there's no work at the end of the story, like, here, these things happened to me. And that's,
Yeah.
nobody's buying off on that. People want to, like you coming back to work. People want to see the recovery, the resilience, the grit that it took. They want the comeback story. That is the American thing. Show me where
Right.
it sucked and show me where it doesn't suck anymore. Or if it still does suck, how did you get through the suck? That's
Right.
what
And
people want. They
actually,
want the work.
right. The reality of it is I had a I don't know, what's the word? A reoccurrence of brain issues a couple of months back. So much so that I had to cancel teaching classes that I had. I got called on by the news. I've done a couple of news as an expert on the RNC planning after Trump, the assassination attempt on Trump. And then I was getting called for after the Georgia school shooter, but I had to say no because I couldn't speak again. My lag was too much. So I would, this is the thing that I think I didn't think about or I never read about in all of the information I looked up about PTSD and TBIs and everything else. It's like if you hurt your knee in football and your knee hurts occasionally. So if you have a TBI, even if you get to the point where you're functional again, it's not holding you back, you can do the thing you want to do, it doesn't mean it's completely cured and you have a brand new brain. You have the same brain. You have new routes that these thoughts are using. And if you get stress, the PTS that the post-traumatic stress is still there. It's still in your central nervous system, still exists. These chemicals still exist. You will have reoccurrences of this kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be to the magnitude. And the only way that I can recommend and the only way that I have been able to manage it, quote unquote, manage it, is to adopt an observer. I'm not getting pissed about it. I'm not getting sad about it. I'm not going to call it bad. I'm not going to call it a failure. I'm not calling it anything. I'm an observer. I'm going to watch how this goes, see where this is going to go. My faith is in God, because if God is for me, who could be against me? And let's see what happens. Here I am on this podcast with you. I haven't had any communication issues other than forgetting the word reoccurrence, but that's because I'm old. And so I got through it. And so will there be more probably, will there be inflammation issues? I have to watch my sugar. I have to be careful, with things that I do. I'm working out more, but it's a different workout. I used to run 6 miles twice a week and bench a million things because I had to be as good as short as I was with my little female upper body, which takes a lot more work to get strong than a male's upper body. I was going to be strong. I was not going to let anybody outrun me, any of that stuff. Now I don't care about that. I want to be healthy for myself. I carry a little pudge. I like it. It's all good. I like who I am. And so if you're going through something, if you got to sit back and adopt this observer mentality. Just watch it happen and know that it's not going to be forever. And when you come out on the other side, you can get back to the things you wanted to do. That's all I got to say about that.
I am so grateful. I know you're on LinkedIn, and I will post that in the show notes as well. But where else can people find you if you want to be found?
Yeah, email me at fp@feliciapecora.com. Any questions? If you're a company, if you want to bring training to your organization, if you're a first responder or a veteran and you just want to talk to somebody about what you're going through, email me. We can connect. I don't want to take all this stuff that I accumulated with me. I want to spread it out. I want to share it with people so that, lives can be improved and people can be genuinely happy no matter what the circumstances are. That's the goal.
That certainly is a great goal. Well, again, I'm so grateful for your time today and being on here. Hope we can talk again soon. I enjoy the conversations. And for anyone who's listening, Amazon, and pick up your copy of Hiding in Plain Sight, The Truth About Trauma, Service, and the Way Forward. Oh, look at that. That was not planned. Your fingers are over the video. There we go.
5 stars. I got to give my
Sure.
Google review. 5 stars here. You got to get this book if you're a working officer, if you're a retired officer, if you're an accountant, if you're a lawyer. Everybody has events that push you to the edge, and anybody's wheels can fall off.
Absolutely. So, this is just the human condition that just explained in my words and my experience. I think it'll touch a lot of lives and spouses, partners. I was actually told by somebody who's in that story, a partner, Richard George. We spoke about it, and he read the book, and he told me, this is the first thing that I've read since college, and I hate you for that. And I said, well, I'm thinking about doing an Audible. And he goes, you mean you were going to read it to me? He said a lot of wonderful things, and not an avid reader, but he hard time putting it down, and told me, he says, I'm getting a copy for my dad and for my brothers and for my daughter. He said, this is like an owner's manual. It's a how-to guide on how to deal with the people who love us. And I said, it's funny. It wasn't until after I wrote this that I looked at it for what it was. And it was anything really. It's a love letter to my wife. I mean, I even asked in the intro that hopefully one of these days my kids will read the book, and in time I'll receive some grace. Yeah, but anyway, the book, but more than that, don't be afraid to tell your story. I think there's a lot of folks, I know there's a lot of folks out there that once they hear, Peco, your story and my story and everybody else who's joining this, this adventure, this mission of storytelling, you're going to find out that even though our experiences are different, our responses, our physical and emotional responses to these experiences are very similar. And each of us have found a way forward, and it may be something that can help someone else. So I hope for this mission is for everyone just to own their journeys and to tell this story. Until next time, thank you.